Hello, everybody, and Happy New Year to all of you. Welcome back to Practically Political. As always, it's great to have you with us. I'm Dave Spencer.
And I'm Carrie Sheffield. Happy 2025. We hope you all had wonderful holidays and a relaxing new year. And we're going to do a wrap-up show. Dave and I have come prepared with our wrap-up for 2024. And I think it's going to be a fun show. And we'll get right into it. So for me, I came with 2 gold nuggets and 2 lumps of coal. So I'm going to start with my first gold nugget, and it's a nugget. Dave, I know you love him, and it's
President. Let me guess.
Yes, and it's so deserving because he likes gold things. So my first gold nugget is to President-elect Donald J. Trump, the Man of the Year for Time magazine. And it goes without saying why he was chosen as the Person of the Year for Time magazine. He's made history that he will take office again. And I personally have seen a change in him since he survived that assassination attempt too, actually. But when he actually shed blood for our country, I've seen him become more presidential. I've seen him understand the weight of the office. And also hearing Melania, they know what to expect this time. And so I'm really excited. And so that is my first gold nugget. Over to you, Dave.
Well, from as they say, from your lips to God's ears. And this show is not going to be one where we have a debate. We're just going to give our awards. But I am someone who has said before, I wish the president-elect the best. I am not quite as sanguine as you, but I do believe that everyone deserves the benefit of the doubt, and hopefully wisdom and years may have had some effect. I hope that'll do that. My big winner, if you will, and I say this, they're winners, though the country is not going to win, are the new oligarchs, and that is headed by Elon Musk, but also the Mark Andreessens and the rest of the gang, all these people that came and supported him. I don't think you've ever had someone in history, a situation in history, where you have the world's wealthiest man going to be joined at the hip with the world's most powerful man. Now, of course, there's debates about how long this bromance will last, because we know Donald Trump is not fond of sharing the spotlight. But in this case, I think it's a little different because Elon Musk is no Steve Bannon. He can't just discard him with the government contracts he has, with the incredible platform he has. How many more followers does he have than Trump on X, for example? So I think this bromance will come and go. But just in general, when you look at crypto, when you look at AI, when you look at all the benefits that a lot of these tech people will have, they're clearly the biggest winners. The question is, will the country be a loser?
Well, I think from their perspective, and I think that's a great pick, Dave. I think from their perspective, they saw the shift of the country. It's important to remember that Elon Musk had voted for Barack Obama. He'd even said this. And I think that the Democrat Party didn't leave Elon Musk I'm sorry, you know the phrase. I just butchered it.
Well,
the Democrat Party left him. And anyway, that's my take on that, Dave. So
no, he saw an opportunity. He, like Trump, is transactional. This has nothing to do with the party. That's a nice way to try and put the best possible face on it. But the bottom line is that he has huge government contracts. He has a lot, he does a lot of business with China. I could go on, but again, we're not going to debate these points, but I do not think this was a move that was out of altruism or party. It was done for pure self-interest for all these guys in a nonpartisan way. But what's your next one?
But self-interest is, as Adam Smith would say,
anyway,
keeps us free.
Let's move on.
All right. My first lump of coal is to Vice President Kamala Harris, because not only did she run what I experienced as a very inauthentic campaign when she's writing 7 or 8-figure checks to celebrities who can't even be bothered to sing for her, and to build sets that are not worth the price tag. It was astroturfing. And it was interesting to me how Kamala Harris, she over and over, she would be asked a question and then she would say, well, as someone from a middle class family, even though it had nothing to do with the question. And my experience of that was that she was trying to basically do class warfare, that she was trying to, in her brain, she thought that the more she talked about being middle class,
No,
the more
I
she
understand.
could drive people away from Trump and create jealousy and really a socialist mindset to be angry at someone's success or wealth. And so it was just, but I think that the most upsetting, even more upsetting part of what she did was that she spent 3.5 years covering up for Joe Biden, for the leader and his decline, and people saying, oh, he was doing gymnastics around everyone in private. And anyway, she deserves a big lump of coal.
Okay. Actually, my big lump of coal in terms of the biggest loser of 2024 actually goes to the President Biden himself, because after a very productive first 2 years, he has severely tarnished his legacy. The list goes on and on. He should have never run. And as we talked about before, the worst thing that happened to the Dems was doing well in the midterms. If they'd been shellacked as they were in 2008 and 1994, it would have forced Biden to not run. It would have forced them to go after voters that they weren't winning, which is obviously something that they didn't do very well. It's easy to go after voters that you're winning. And then, I mean, the list just went on and on from his terrible debate performance. He still refused to step down. And this, again, robbed the American people of what they deserve. But debates, I mean, Democrats criticized Trump for not participating in debates. At least they had them, right? And then the primary process, which never happened. I think Kamala Harris, as you know, we said on the show many times, was never a big fan of hers. She was dealt a lousy hand, and I think she played it as well as she could. I think her problem is that she's not a bad politician when it comes to being prepared. She kicked Trump's ass in the debate or reading the teleprompter, but when it comes to being a nimble politician and answering about questions that were about as unpredictable as the sunrise, like, well, gee, would you have done anything different? No one was ever going to ask that question. She totally flubbed it. But the bottom line is it should have never been this way. There should have been a full, and then Biden, if he hadn't already, stepped on himself enough, was brittle during the campaign. And then to top it all off, after he said he wouldn't, he pardoned his son. And I think only about even 25% of Democrats even approve of that. It was just a terrible way. And it's too bad because he has some real good accomplishments, but he goes out a bitter man. And the best part of it all is I'm hearing rumors that he still said he could have won. Now, if that's not detached from reality, I don't know what is.
I agree with you, Dave. I agree with you. I think, that comedian who was on CNN for New Year's, she said it well, which is that Democrats claim to be the party of pro-choice, but not when it came to a primary. And I will say I agree also with what you said about the Democrats being complacent based on their success. And that's my warning to Republicans. Don't get complacent. They've got to have results. So don't let it get to their heads when it comes to governing. And they really only got 2 years because then Congress is going to be elected again. So hopefully they'll be able to keep both chambers and then have 4 years for Trump's agenda. But if not, they could lose one or both houses, and then Trump would.
Yes, and that actually leaves me. I'll take the next. The most overrated event of 2024, frankly, was Republicans thinking that they have a mandate. Now, this, by the way, in their defense, has happened after almost every single election. Remember the permanent Republican majority that was going to happen after 2004? Well, 2006, they lost Congress. 2008, Obama had a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate and the biggest electoral college win since the Republicans back in the 80s. And the Republicans need to be very careful. They lost seats in the House. The Senate, it was almost impossible for them not to win because the map was so ugly. They were defending zero seats in states that Biden won in 2016 or 2020, whereas the Democrats had to defend 7 seats in states that Trump won in 2016 or 2020. But again, this was people being not happy with the incumbent, and this is not a big endorsement of Trump. So do not misread this election, because already I think the House is gone in 2024. The Senate is more challenging because of the demography, but this is no mandate, folks.
Well, yeah, I think the Senate math, that's a really important point. And our friend Ellen, who was on the show with us, who's with the NRSC, she's not complacent. So I'm glad to know she's at the helm. But I think it's going to be the results at the end of the day. I mean, that's really what drove Trump and the Republicans to the Congress, that the economy and immigration were the 2 top issues. And so Republicans have to deliver on those issues. Otherwise, they're not going to win. But I am optimistic, and I believe they're going to get stuff done. So we'll see. But my underrated, and he's also my second gold nugget, is Governor Glenn Youngkin. And I think he's gold. I think he should be president in 4 years. He's been an excellent governor. Last year, 2024 it just was the capstone of 3 years. He's got 1 more year left in office, and then he's term limited out. But CNBC ranked Virginia the #1 place to do business. And for the first time in 10 years, more people have moved into Virginia than out of Virginia. So he stopped that blood flow, or the migration outward. He also put in place some phenomenal, anyone who watches or listens to the show knows I'm passionate about mental health. He put in a transformational behavioral health plan for people in Virginia, and that was close to my heart. So I think the problem with him is that he doesn't toot his own horn enough. And I'm not saying that's a problem as a character issue. It's a problem in a political cycle where it's all about self-promotion. And so I hope that in this year, he'll find a way to elevate his profile. And I think one interesting thing he's been doing is that I wrote a piece about this late last year, he's been piggybacking off a lot of policies that Trump supports. So I think you're going to see a really good synergy between Trump and Youngkin. So Youngkin's come out in support of no tax on tips. He's come out and said, I'm going to crack down on sanctuary cities. He wants to lower the tax burden when it comes to automobiles in Virginia. He's also expanding a big school choice voucher program in Virginia. That was in his budget proposal. So there's a lot that I think the two of them can really model when it comes to federalism with the state and federal level. So that's Glenn Youngkin for you.
All right. Well, I gave my lump of coal to overrated, so I'll give my nugget to underrated, and that was democratic, free and fair elections around the world. I think it was not something that you heard much about, but one of the benefits, and we talked about this on the show before, I didn't want Trump to win, but if he did win, I wanted him to win convincingly, because you did not hear a peep about fraud, about rigged elections, about anything going wrong with our system. It worked just as smoothly in 2020 as it did in 2024 as it did in 2020. Of course, the difference was in 2020, Trump became the first president ever to try to block the peaceful transfer of power because he couldn't stand the fact that he lost. So, and this happened around the world too. A lot of places you had free and fair elections. And so I think that was a big win for a world where sometimes it seems that the bad guys are winning more than the good guys.
I'm glad we had a peaceful election. I'm glad that Republicans learned how to early vote. I think that was kind of a sleeper, underappreciated issue for Republicans because they had been behind the wheel on that, and they caught up.
Thanks to Trump.
And we're going to do that hopefully in Virginia. That's one of my goals for this year, one of my resolutions, if you will. But my last lump of coal I'm giving to the architects of so-called critical theory, the creators of what has become DEI. basically, the American people rejected this. The extremism of dividing people and slicing them and dicing people up by gender or race or disability. The concept of the United States is always e pluribus unum, that we're coming together. And so my goal or my request for the folks over at the Critical Theory Factory, please go read a history book instead of making up these dark, twisted fairy tales that are divorced from reality. And that's just my free advice for Democrats. I'm feeling charitable. If you want to win again, don't divide people this way. Don't make people feel like they're evil. Don't throw the words Nazi around. That's one thing that's interesting about how smoothly the elections ran, that almost immediately it was like, oh yeah, Trump's a cool guy. Yeah, like Biden's going to be giving him a big Cheshire cat grin at the White House, even though just shortly before that they'd called him a Nazi and said that he was all these horrible things. And so another request.
One of it is that the Democrats actually still play by the rules. And so when they lose elections, they admit it graciously, and they also do the tradition, which Trump violated, of having the president-elect come to the White House. So, and I must admit, it's a little rich to hear a Trump supporter pontificate about making up grand conspiracy theories and lies. I mean, my gosh, where do I start?
I'm talking about this election. We're talking about 2020.
Yes, I'm talking about this election.
Yes, and it was. I'm speaking about rhetorically.
Oh, my!
Trump.
I mean, the invasion.
Trump was almost murdered twice, and that's partially because of the rhetoric that the left whips up around him.
That is not the look there. First of all, the guy who shot him was a Trump supporter in Pennsylvania, so that theory totally goes out the window. But secondly, the lowest committers of crime in this country are undocumented immigrants. Why? Because they don't want to get caught. But you listen to Donald Trump, and there are millions of them invading our country, killing everybody right and left. I think that's a lot more of a damaging conspiracy theory than the wokeness. But I will say, I agree with you that my lump of coal does also go to, in terms of biggest losers and being overrated, however you want to say it, to the DEI, what I would call the social justice movement. If you ask most people to define woke, it's so funny. I asked them, 80% of the people can't define it. I think it's an obsession with social justice issues. And you saw that with everything from trans to DEI. You know, this country is supposed to be a colorblind, meritocratic country. And what bothers me most about the DEI, the part that really gets in my craw the most, is the E, which stands for equity. See, because equality is equal opportunity, but equity is equal outcome. And that's, I think, is not American, because on its face, but what really bothers me is that a lot of these people that claim they deserve equity, it's not because they didn't work hard enough. It's not because they made poor decisions. It's not because they aren't accountable. It's because the system screwed them. And that's what really gets me. And so I think this is proven to be a loser issue. You don't have to throw trans people under the bus to have women not compete in men's sports, okay? That's not throwing trans people under the bus. It's not throwing trans people under the bus to require someone to be 18 before they can have a sex change operation, okay? It's not throwing people of LGBTQ, whatever, under the bus when you have certain limits on what you do. And this is why people hate Democrats. I cannot say this enough. On kitchen table issues, there was a blind survey where they asked people on the issues, do you approve, do you disapprove, approve, disapprove, by a 10-point margin. People approved of democratic positions more. But the reason that they lose is because they're obsessed with this social justice stuff that most people don't care about. And then on top of that, of course, there's, a lot of the stuff which they've retreated from, but is bad memories, like the Green New Deal and, Medicare for all and defund the police, even though that was limited to a few people like Cori Bush. And by the way, the Democrats purged the bad people from their ranks, like Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman. Republicans reward them. That's the difference of the two parties. But I would also give another I don't know whether you call this a lump of coal or a nugget. I think some people would view it as both, but the most certainly underrated dynamic that Donald Trump is going to have to deal with in 2025 is, I don't know whether you call them the Freedom Caucus or the spendthrifts, but it's basically the Chip Roys, the Masseys, the people in Congress that are not going to be bullied and that do not want to have all this spending. You know, Donald Trump was the most profligate president in his 4 years. And if these tax cuts are not just extended, but it looks like they're talking about expanding them, it's going to be an economic disaster. And soon enough, at some point, the bond market is going to say enough. And even though the United States, they're going to start punishing us. And that may happen during Trump's term.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that because I know the show is going to air later, but as of right now, there's breaking news that Massey just voted against Mike Johnson for speaker.
Well, he said he was going to vote. So,
yeah, but
they can't lose a single vote after Massey.
Exactly. So it's we'll see what happens. But I agree that the spending's. I mean that's my hope with the Doge Commission. That's my my desire. I'm going to be watching the Doge Commission to see if their recommendations will be implemented, if we can save money, and if we can.
Are you giving a gold nugget to the Doge?
I'm saying, well, I'm giving a gold nugget to the idea of Doge. But if we do the same episode next year, then I'll be able to tell you if they deserve that gold nugget or if they deserve a lump of coal. Because you'd have a lot of other commissions like Simpson Bowles that outlined some great ideas, but they weren't really implemented. So we'll see what happens. And I think the George Will said something interesting once. I think he was speaking actually to my alma mater at Brigham Young University. And he said, if the idea that democracy is compromised, that you win some, you lose some, but if as a conservative, you're only slowing the rate of growth of government, you are always losing. Because as Ronald Reagan said, the closest thing to eternal life is a government program. And so it'll be really interesting to see if the Doge Commission, they're bringing the Silicon Valley mindset. And I think that's what our government needs right now, because I mean, I live here in the DC area and we are the top metro area GDP per capita from a median household standpoint. And I don't think that's healthy. I think it should be the areas of innovation, not the areas of taking money from taxpayers that are the wealthiest, in my opinion. But we'll see what happens. So I am giving a provisional gold nugget to the Doge Commission, Dave.
Well, it's very interesting because I actually gave a nugget and a lump to the Doge Commission. I give a nugget in the sense that obviously I like the idea and obviously we need it, but people, both Elon and Vivek are pretty ignorant when it comes to how a lot of government works. And my problem with this whole concept is that we're returning to the same set of circumstances that we did with the debt ceiling fight. And that is that you have 70% of the budget, which is entitlements. Apparently that's off the table. Now then you have another 16 or whatever percent that's defense. And that's off the table now because we have to make the country stronger. So you're basically trying to cut $2 trillion from what's less than $2 trillion of spending. So until you put everything on the table, it is a useless, frustrating endeavor that is not going to go anywhere. So it gets a lump of coal in that area because no one is having the cojones, frankly, to come up and say that, as Jesse James would say, hey, where's the money? Entitlements. And there are ways, particularly with Social Security, where you don't have to reduce the benefits, in the short term, but it's the old AMCO commercial, right? You can pay me now or you can pay me more later. And, there have been some courageous senators like Bill Cassidy who pointed out that in 2034, there are cuts coming, whether we do anything or not, and they're going to be more painful. So we need to get our act together. But so far, I see no appetite for it. And I hear Democratic strategists saying, well, the first thing we have to do is get them to vote on something that pledges that we won't cut Medicare or Social Security. Well, if we're not going to cut Medicare or Social Security, we're not going to cut spending, period.
Dave, you and I are in agreement on that. I mean, entitlements it's the elephant in the room. And I think there's a lot you can do for Medicare, the word cut, it's like the way you lower healthcare prices is to introduce more competition and then to separate the high risk pool, because only a few patients, relatively speaking, incur a vast disproportionate amount of the spending. And so we put them in a high risk pool.
And don't forget, 75% of healthcare spending is during the last 6 months of life.
Exactly. So we find a way to take care of those individuals, and we find a way to lower those costs. And the way you do it is through competition. I mean, that's how we've seen prices go down when it comes to Medicare Part D. The budgets and the outcomes of that have been better compared to other parts because there's a lot more competition in Medicare Part D. But I don't want to go on the side tangent of that. But all that to say is, Dave, I agree with you that the entitlements, I'd love to see Social Security have an optional program where you can opt out of the government benefits in order to have your own private retirement funding. And that way, that's less of a liability, and it's less of a ball and chain that people have to be locked into, and they could get better returns. And I think that that's something, again, optional. If people want to opt out of it, they should be able to. And the retirement age, we've got to change that. I also think we should have the retirement age be different based on your your physical body. That that it's if you're wearing and tearing, if you're moving things around physically, you should be able to retire sooner than someone who's sitting in an office where your bigger danger is not moving around enough. I mean, and that's something that is a modern day first world problem. But in any case, Dave, I've been going on.
No, I think it's really worth saying. And the mistake that Bush made when he, in 2005, when he talked about privatizing Social Security, by the way, the Dow Jones Industrial was at 10,000 in 2005. Less than 20 years later, it's over 40,000. So the mistake that he made is that it came across as, oh, this is going to be a fee bonanza. And, a lot of these rich financial people are going to be avoided. What he should have done and said, look, we're just going to put it in the index funds. And I'm not stupid enough to try to manage my own money, but any great investor will tell you 80% of the people can't beat the market. So skip their fees, just put it in the index funds. You pay very low fees. Whatever the market does, you do. That's the proposal that should have been on the table, but it was far more opaque than that. And it allowed opponents to say, this is just going to be a payday to all the financial people, and we're going to get fees up the gazoo and all this stuff. But I agree, there was an opportunity that was really squandered there, and our Social Security would have been a lot healthier, because I can promise you government bonds have not quadrupled in less than 20 years, which is basically what Social Security is used for. But unfortunately, we are out of time. So there's so many more nuggets and lumps that we could award. There's certainly no lack of candidates, and it's a very interesting show. But 2025 will be quite the year. There's going to be a lot going on geopolitically, and I think that hopefully we will see a big change. My other underrated thing, and this was really the Democrats not tooting their own horn, they're the worst marketers and salespeople in the world, was just how much our adversaries have weakened, particularly during the second half of 2024. Everyone from Russia, China, Iran, Syria, all these countries, North Korea, they're all struggling, where the U.S., even though voters didn't feel it, and that was another lump of coal would be to go to incumbents around the world. Joe Biden had a 40% approval rating. That was the bad news. The good news was I think it's higher than any other incumbent in any other industrialized country. But anyway, we will leave it there. But thanks to all of you for joining us. We wish you the very best and the happiest and most productive 2025 from all of us here at Prachi Political. I'm Dave Spencer.
And I'm Carrie Sheffield. Happy New Year. And yes, all the best in 2025.